on to the final step of cellular respiration, which is the electron transport chain. Just a quick overview of what we talked about so far. Glycolysis, you're taking this glucose molecule and you're breaking it down into these 3-carbon pyruvates. Those 3-carbon pyruvates are going to enter the citric acid cycle. They're going to lose a carbon. It's going to be released as CO2. Also, during glycolysis, you are going to form NADH, which is going to be sent to the inner compartment of the mitochondria for the electron transport chain. During the citric acid cycle, you are going to continue breaking that glucose molecule down, that pyruvate molecule down. You are going to get FADH2, which is going to go into also the electron transport chain. Also, you get ATP from the citric acid cycle, and you get some ATP from glycolysis. So let's talk about the electron transport chain. Here we are at the final stage of cellular respiration, the electron transport chain. So inside here is on the very inside of the mitochondria. This is between the 2 layers of the mitochondria here, and then up here would be inside the cell. So the mitochondria has 2 cell membranes. Okay, not cell membranes, it has 2 phospholipid bilayers. So this is not the outside of the cell up here. This is the outside of the mitochondria, and then out here would be inside the cell, and then way up here would be like that cell's actual cell membrane. So again, we are zoomed way in. This is the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Okay, this is the outer membrane of the mitochondria. So remember from before, we had all of those electron carriers. We had things like NADH and FADH2. What's going to happen is this NADH is going to drop off this electron, which is the form of a hydrogen. It comes in the form of a hydrogen. And it's going to get converted back just into NAD. What's this NAD going to do? Well, it's going to go back to glycolysis and help continue converting glucose into simpler form. It's going to help continue breaking down glucose. FADH2 is going to do the same thing. It's going to drop off its electrons, which has been carrying around in the form of hydrogens, and it's just going to get turned back into an FAD plus. This is NAD plus, by the way. Okay. So thus far, what we have done is we have taken our electrons that we got from our original glucose or our pyruvate, and we have brought them inside of the mitochondria, and we are now using them to energize these transmembrane proteins inside of here. And the reason that we're doing that, because we actually want to pump out a bunch of H pluses from inside of this mitochondria. We want to pump these H pluses out into this space up here. Okay, great. So now we've pumped all of these H pluses out of this inside of the mitochondria, deep inside the mitochondria, into this intermembrane space here, in between the inside of the mitochondria and the outside, which is just the cell. So now that we have all of these plus charges built up here, you should remember that likes repel each other. So this is a highly energized state because we have all of these plus ions here. And what's going to wind up happening is these plus ions are going to wind up pushing one of them, or several of them, through this protein here. This protein is called ATP synthase. Okay, and this is like the bang for your buck. Okay, this is the reason we spent all of this time building up those electrons so that we could make these proteins negative, so we could pump out H plus charges, ultimately causing them to be pushed back through this particular enzyme protein. And what this is going to do is going to make lots of ATP. This is the big payoff from this whole entire cellular respiration thing that we've been doing. What are the inputs from our electron transport chain? Well, this is just going to be electron carriers. So that would be things like FADH2, NADH. Where did we get these? We got them from either the citric acid cycle or from glycolysis, right? These electrons came from those chemical bonds, and we are going to use those to create ATP. Okay, so the last thing that we get out here is actually water. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, that's kind of random. Where did this water come from? Well, what's happening here is we're bringing in all of these electrons into the mitochondria, bringing all of those things in, remember, to create that proton gradient in order to pump those hydrogens out of the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And in order for us to be able to continue this process, those electrons have to go somewhere, or they're just going to continue building up and up and up and up. And so what happens is our friend oxygen comes in and actually is going to grab those electrons, and that's how we get rid of them. It's because oxygen comes in and grabs those electrons from the mitochondria, as well as a couple of protons. But if you didn't have this oxygen, those electrons would have nowhere to go. You would just continue building up. Electrons in your mitochondria, and the process would stop, which is why you have to breathe. This is why you have to inhale oxygen so that you can continue bringing those final ultimate electron acceptors in.